Having had the dramatic delivery of food and medicine to the Cambodian-Thai border on Christmas 1979, there was a tendency to sit back and say, well, that worked, and that was a great moment, and move on to the next project. However, money kept coming in. Iowans kept giving. There were sermons being given in Christian churches and in Jewish synagogues and in schools. Teachers were talking about the need. The story of suffering Cambodians had sparked such interest, had touched such a sensitive, vibrant chord within so many Iowans of this humanitarian need and what we could do, and the stories about our food and medicine already reaching the refugees impelled and inspired people to do more. And school projects, money was raised in schools, teachers were organizing students were organizing themselves at workplaces, people were donating money and sending it in. And then I got a letter from Dr. Bill Rosenfeld, who was a physician in Mason City, graduate of the University of Iowa Medical School, who said, I want to volunteer to go to Thailand, to go to the Cambodian border, to work in the hospital there. And that was followed by communications from several nurses, Iowan nurses. We want to volunteer. We want to go and work in those camps. And so, as the executive director of Iowa Shares, I started looking around for opportunities. As a State Department Foreign Service officer, I was in touch with the American Embassy in Thailand and with the officers there who were dealing with these issues. And they connected me to, they told me there was a hospital at a place called Kaho-I-Dang. And Kaho-I-Dang was near Sakeo, where we had first seen the terrible suffering by the Cambodian genocide victims. And now Kaho-I-Dang was a hospital with a little bit more than the makeshift tent that we had seen on that first few days at Sakeo, but still very, very primitive conditions. And there was a group in Minneapolis, the American Refugee Committee, that was connected to that hospital and was able to send doctors and nurses. So I'm in touch with the American Refugee Committee, said, I have some medical personnel. They said, we need them, we're prepared to send them, if you can just support them. And so Iowa Shares' next phase was to provide the funding. We didn't pay the doctors or nurses any salary. We paid for their travel, their upkeep, so they would be able to eat and have a place to stay in Kaho-I-Dang. We sent the money to the American Refugee Committee, and soon Dr. Rosenfeld and then several nurses were on planes, landing in Bangkok, being taken out and beginning working at Kaho-I-Dang Hospital. Dr. Rosenfeld wrote an article for the magazine of the University of Iowa Hospital and Medical School, describing what he was doing, what he had seen. And his quote was, I've seen more life-saving situations. I practiced more life-saving medicine in 1 week in Thailand than I had done in all of my medical career up to this time. Here was a doctor, what had inspired him to help and save human beings, to go to medical school in the first place. And now he was finding fulfillment in this distant, primitive situation. And the article he wrote was so incredibly compelling about the suffering, the trauma that these adults and children had gone through living in this barbaric Khmer Rouge situation. He described how the children would do little plays, and they would act out what had happened in the Khmer Rouge camps. And they would, young children, 6, 7, 8 years old, in their play, putting a rope around the neck of certain other children who were what they had seen and taking them out to be executed, replicating, repeating what they had experienced in their young lives. It was so heartrending, so incredible, painful, and yet what these doctors and nurses were doing to help save lives, to help put these fragile human beings back on some course to have hopefully something close to a normal existence, was so incredibly powerful. Iowa Shares ended up raising about $600,000, which in 2019 terms is close to $2 million. All of it, except for that one corporate contribution, sent in over several years period of time by individual Iowans. And all with that inspiration from the papal visit in October 1979.